Welcome in. It is the Northside Baseball Podcast off-season edition. He is Jason Ross. I am Mitch Whitmire. As always, we're talking anything and everything Chicago Cubs baseball. And as the calendar is now turned to November, we know that the talk of the town, of course, is free agency. Who could the Cubs potentially bring in? Who could they bring back? Jason and I are going to go through a bunch of those names. Jason, first off, good to see you again, man. Last
good
time
to
we
see you too.
chit-chatted, we were putting a bow on the show for the Cubs season after a
Yeah, it
playoff loss to
sucked.
Milwaukee.
Yeah, we at least have a little bit of hope again.
Yes, and hope is always a good thing to have. Not sure how much you watched either, but the Dodgers obviously went on to win the World Series. I did tune in for a few games of those series. I was not interested in Dodgers Brewers. I was not interested in Blue Jays Mariners, even though it sounds like a thrilling series. It was still pretty raw after the Cubs had been eliminated. That I didn't want to just keep jumping back into baseball games. So I don't know how you had your viewing experience the rest of the playoffs, but I did tune into a lot of the World Series.
I watched three innings of World Series baseball. It was late Saturday night, and I had just watched the Kentucky football game, and I thought, hey,
I'm assuming, did they win or?
No, they actually did win. They beat Auburn in the ugliest 10-3 win that you've ever seen. And I thought, hey, what's a little bit more masochistic than just I've probably just watched the end of the World Series. So I turned on the ninth inning because I was like, not Shota, but Shohei's going to be up. Might as well give it a peek, see if there's some magic. And then Miguel Rojas had magic. And so at that point, I was staying up until midnight, regardless. On my couch, and I'm glad I watched the last couple of innings. I'm glad I could say I saw it, but with the I don't know, probably of the Cubs games, I probably watched about most of 150 Cubs games. I probably watched parts of 100 minor league baseball games. I played 20 baseball games myself. I played 40 softball games. And once the Cubs are out, I give myself a quick timeout from baseball before I can care about two other teams playing in games that don't involve the Cubs. So I took mostly a break, but I felt like I would be doing myself a little bit of a disservice if I didn't at least watch the final out of the World Series.
That's fair, man. That's very fair. We're here today to talk Cubs off-season, Cubs free agency, give you a preview, some chit-chat about a couple of moves, qualifying offers that have been sent out, and, of course, the Cubs opting to bring Colin Ray back on a one-year deal. I think we should start with Kyle Tucker. The Cubs give him the qualifying offer. Pretty cut and dried. Like, he's going to decline that. He is going to hit free agency, and to me, Jason, seems like a foregone conclusion. He is not going to be a Chicago Cub.
No, I was a believer that they would try for a while, but they just don't seem like they have any interest in it. And I think that's just the Cubs' MO at this point. They're just not gonna sign a guy like Kyle Tucker to a long-term contract. I don't think he probably helped himself at the end of the season with the way that the kind of last month, 2 months happened with him not really being a major factor in those things. He probably, I don't think he cost himself any money in it. He's still going to make plenty, but I think the Cubs probably felt like they could operate in the next year without Kyle Tucker. And that's probably all the excuse they need to just give him a QO and move on. So, he's probably elsewhere. I don't expect we're going to see that the Cubs seriously pursue him. I hope to be wrong, that we hear that they're sitting down seriously with Kyle Tucker's representatives and it's like an honest to God conversation about a 10-year contract. But I think if we hear anything, it's probably going to be that the Cubs sat down with Tucker and his representatives and offered him one of these 5-year $40 million deals that he was just never even going to consider, and that's probably going to be it. I don't know how you feel about it, but I can't. I've been the optimistic guy since trade deadline. This is the trade happened, and I can't find it in me to find a reason that they're going to sign him.
Nope. And I have resided myself to believing he's gone, he's going to go somewhere else, and if he does come back to the Cubs, then it's a pleasant surprise. I am in no way going to get my hopes up, but it's also it's a genuine thought that I have. It's not like I'm on the fence. Man, I think he might come back. I think he might. I think it's 50-50, but I don't want to get my hopes up. It's 95 to 5%. I think there's a 5% chance he comes back to the Cubs, which kind of stinks, but they get him for 1 year. They go to the playoffs. There was a lot of good, especially early on. The injury kind of derailed some plans and perhaps some expectations that Tucker had for himself. And I will say this, if he ends up with the Dodgers, that's the one team that would piss me off. If he ends up with the Dodgers. I'm kind of sick of the Dodgers, sick of seeing them win. But hey, you give their ownership and their brain trust credit for going out and spending every single offseason. It's
hard to blame them.
Exactly. It's generated back-to-back World Series. I think some of my, I don't know if I would say anger, but some of my distaste with the Dodgers comes from a jealousy standpoint that they have an ownership group that's willing to spend. So yeah, that's my one thing with Tucker. If he ends up in the Dodgers, I'll be kind of ticked off, but won't be surprised. But I will be surprised if he comes back to the Cubs. So I thought we have to start with Kyle Tucker. It's the big name, obviously, for the Cubs, and for really it could shape how free agency kind of comes to be. He could be one of those. It could be a domino that, if his free agency drags out a little bit, other pieces could have to wait to fall until they see where Kyle Tucker ends up. We've kind of seen that in years past with other players. He is kind of cut from that cloth, and I think he is one of the obviously premier players in this free agency, which again is another reason why I don't think the Cubs are going to get him back. They're not going to get in a bidding war. They just aren't going to do it.
No, they're not.
Another name to bring up, qualifying offer wise, Shota Imanaga, 1 year, 22 million qualifying offer, which little bump for him for the 1 year. Cubs opting, don't want to go the full 3 years with him. Shota had his trouble with giving up the home run ball. Obviously, we're all well aware of that. Second half, I don't think any pitcher in baseball gave up more home runs, right, than Shota Imanaga. Nope. It was a constant issue. First innings were an issue for him. Really for more than just the second half of the season. The first inning issue popped up on the radar in the first half as well. I am in the camp of, if you can bring Shota back 1 year, $22 million on this qualifying offer, I'm all for it. I hope he can straighten things out, maybe get back to that path he was on in his first year. I don't think it's as simple, at least in my opinion, Jason, I don't think it's as simple as saying, everyone figured him out, he's going to be horrible. I choose not to believe that that's the case, that he can find some middle ground in what was a really good first year and a pretty rocky second year in the majors. And I'm for bringing Shota back on a 1 year qualifying offer. And I think from the Cubs' perspective, from Shota's perspective, it's a fair number. The qualifying offer is what it is, and I don't think it's a lowball number for Shota given what he gave you in year two.
Oh, and I mentioned it before we went on air. There's almost no such thing as a bad 1 year contract from a baseball standpoint, from an ops position. It works out or it doesn't, and then he moves on anyways. So there's really no such thing as a bad 1 year contract. So if he ends up taking it, the Cubs have a pitcher that they're familiar with, that they're clearly comfortable with him coming back on a 1 year deal. I think what it probably says more so is that the team is not bullish on him multi-year down the road. A little bit of a velocity drop there, lots of home runs, but they are at least bullish in the sense that, if they can get him back for 1 year, that he's still a useful major league pitcher. They also may just believe that he really isn't going to take it and he's going to look for a multi-year deal. And, in that case, the Cubs are going to have probably 2 compensation picks to play with. I think, we'll talk more about free agency and how the Cubs are going to operate later, but, more compensation picks, the better, in terms of how they may target the market and everything. But no, I don't think it's a bad deal. I had written an article a couple of days ago on comparing Shota to recent 3-year deals and about his price range. He's kind of underperformed all of them at the the 57 to $65 million marker. The only pitcher he kind of overplayed was maybe Luis Severino into his contract year, but I think part of Severino's contract was also a Sacramento tax. Hey, this is not a team that's really tried very hard. Who's willing to take a little extra money to come pitch in a AAA ballpark for a couple years? But compared to pitchers like Yusei Kikuchi and guys like that, who was in that 3-year, $60 million range, he really underperformed those guys. So we'll see. Seth Lugo was another one. So we'll see what he ends up getting. I think you couldn't argue with him if he wanted to bet on himself, but now having the QO kind of attached, you kind of have to wonder, is he really going to get a 3-year deal? Market's a little crowded. So I would say probably I'm leaning 60-40 that he ends up accepting it, but it's kind of hard to not want to bet on yourself, to want to try to get a multi-year deal with an impending lockout, potential cap coming. So we'll see. I think he's got an interesting decision to make over the next, 12 days. I think the 18th is the deadline to accept, when that's a little bit of a different situation than Tucker, who I'm sure couldn't decline it fast enough.
Yeah, very different sides of the spectrum there. I will say with Shota too, it is very apparent. Great clubhouse guy, great teammate. Seems to really love Chicago. Like this isn't someone, Jason, who's like it's bitter terms and he doesn't seem too crazy about the city of Chicago or the clubhouse. Like it's the exact opposite. Like he seems to love the clubhouse. His teammates love him, loves Chicago, embraces it. He's quite the character actually in some of the social media
Shota,
videos the Cubs put out. They're hilarious. Like he's a really funny dude. As for
Shota's an awesome dude. I will sincerely miss him if he's gone. I think that was the first thing I wrote in my article is about how much I'll miss him just as a person if he has to leave. Because I love Shota Imanaga as a human being. He's a gem. He's an absolute gem. He seems fantastic, but it just seems like, in terms of like pitcher, if you wanted to kind of upgrade on him, you probably could this offseason, which I hate saying because, as a human being, I find him to be so awesome. So if he's back, I'm going to welcome him back with open arms. He's a fresher breath air as a human being. But if the Cubs want to see if they can try to upgrade on him, if he wants to move on with a multi-year deal, I don't think we can blame either side either. And I don't think it'll be like hard. I don't think it'll be hard feelings between anybody. I think they all understand.
Northside Baseball Podcast. He is Jason Ross. I'm Mitch Woodmeyer, talking anything and everything Chicago Cubs free agency. A couple other, just housekeeping notes. And I don't mean that as a disrespect to the two names that I'm bringing up, but they're not the name like Kyle Tucker or some of these other free agents we're going to talk about. But the Cubs did decline I think it was a mutual option, right, with Justin Turner, and there's like a $2 million buyout as a part of that. So Justin Turner's gone, and they bring back Colin Ray on a 1 year, $6.5 million contract. First with Turner. Again, I thought it was a foregone conclusion. I would have been really surprised if they brought back a guy who's 40 and will be turning 41 this winter, who, I don't know, kind of underwhelmed in his role, but didn't really have a, cemented in role. We said it on the podcast a couple times, Jason. Justin Turner was a vibes guy. I mean, which is great. Yeah. You love having a vibes guy, but if you're known as a vibes guy, it's because your performance, whether it's offensively or defensively, just hasn't quite lived up. And then the other name, Colin Ray, 1 year, $6.5 million deal. My thoughts about Colin Ray. I echoed him early and often. Like, I think he's just a good guy. You can use him in the bullpen. You can use him as your fourth or fifth starter. Like, he will chew up innings, and I think that's incredibly valuable in a 162 game season. Now, if Colin Ray is your number 2 or your number 3 starter, you might be in some trouble, right? But I think just like you need a guy like Colin Ray. I think if you're a true contending team, he's a guy that, once the playoffs come around, you're probably not going to rely on him heavily because that's just not his role. And you have brought up the term designated loser, which is not an insult by any stretch of the imagination.
No, not
and he is one of those guys. But in the regular season, bullpen, sure. Fourth or fifth starter, sure. And he can just chew up innings. So for 1 year, $6.5 million, sign me up on Colin Ray. I'm perfectly fine with it. I'm not like, holy crap, this is awesome. What a great move by the Cubs. And I'm also not like, what are they doing? I'm just like, fine, perfect. I'm good with it.
Yeah, and honestly, I think that deal probably says, like, if I was Javier Assad right now, or Ben Brown, or Jordan Wicks, I'd be semi-packing my bags a little bit. I think you bring back Colin Ray, best laid plans. That's your Javier Assad. That's your Ben Brown. That's your Jordan Wicks, the swing guy in the bullpen. The Cubs used, I believe, 8 starting pitchers last year, maybe 9. So, Colin Ray, if he's your 6th starting pitcher, he's going to start a bunch of baseball games next year. He's going to start 10 or 15 games. You're just going to have injuries. They've got Jackson Wiggins, and he's probably going to be the first guy, come up in late May, June, pull up the Cade Horton thing. But it kind of you kind of have to start to wonder, like, what role does Javier Assad have if Colin Ray is going to do that? Because he's optionable, but like, if you're a Major League Baseball team who's kind of like on the fringe, you might win 82 to 84 games, or maybe you're like the Washington Nationals and kind of need somebody to eat some innings. Like Javier, you could do a lot worse than Javier Assad. And I think right now, if I was handicapping Javier Assad, it's kind of ability to be on the Major League roster, I'd probably lean to the fact that he's probably not going to be here next year. As of right now, it feels like he's more likely to be kind of elsewhere, and I don't know where elsewhere will be, but I think that Colin Ray deal, like, if I was one of those 3 guys, that's kind of how it does. And I mean, if you want to talk about a big trade happening over the offseason, if you did Ben Brown plus Jonathan Long or Owen Casey, like, that's a framework right there for a pretty good trade. If I'm a a team. So could say something about Ben Brown's ability to be traded right now. So on the surface, I like the Colin Ray deal. It's great. They basically just converted his option this year into an option in 2027 and guaranteed him the spot. He pitched great last year. He clearly worked well with Hottovy. So yeah, welcome back, man. I got no problems with that. I'm all aboard the Colin Ray train on that deal.
Northside Baseball Podcast. Jason Ross is he. I am Mitch Whitmire. We'll bounce probably around a couple more Cubs names as we go along, but how we're going to do this is, we'll talk about a couple starting pitchers, maybe fits for the Cubs, maybe just a couple big names, hitters, relief pitchers, a couple of those guys coming over, the Japanese players that could be coming over, and I will definitely defer to you on that. I haven't done my.
I got a favorite one there.
Yeah, I haven't done my deep dive.
I got one. Yeah.
Yeah, let's start with starting pitchers. If you don't mind, Jason, just a name that's constantly been linked with the Cubs, not only going into this free agency, but in the last couple of years, the Cubs drafted him 2014, 15. Where were we at? It's somewhere around there. Yeah. Dylan Cease. And it's a name that's circulating once again, links to him in the Cubs. Cubs drafted him nearly a decade ago. Yeah, what do you think about? Are you in on the idea to bring in Dylan Cease? And where? Yeah. Let me say this: I know a lot, like free agency is just getting going, so we don't know exactly how things are going to take shape. Like maybe the Cubs get Cease and another starting pitcher, right? We don't know, but ideally, where would you see if the Cubs were to land Cease? Where would he kind of fit into the rotation?
I mean, he's probably your 1-2 guy, right?
I was thinking behind Cade, probably, right?
He's probably your one. I think you go into next year. You can't go. I don't think the Cubs are going into next year thinking Cade Horton's their number one starting pitcher, like from day one, right? He's not. I don't think he's starting opening day. I don't think the Cubs go with that. As well as he pitched, I think you defer to a veteran on your on paper best pitcher, and I think it's going to be somebody who's outside of the organization. I don't know if that's going to be Dylan Cease. There's another guy that I'll talk about maybe when we talk more about the Japanese guys that I'm a big fan of who could maybe take the ball, but I don't think it'll be Cade Horton is seen as like the de facto one. I think you signed Dylan Cease as the de facto one in April, but by September, October, you kind of hope that maybe he's the de facto two. And Cade Horton's your de facto one type of a thing. But I like Dylan Cease. I know some of the numbers didn't look really good on the top line. So, if you pull up Dylan Cease's Fangraphs page and you look at his ERA, you'll see the 4.55 and you'll go, did he have that really great of a season? But then you kind of dive into it and you go, well, his strikeout rate was up from the last few years. In fact, it's one of the highest he's ever had. His walk rate is a little higher than last year, but also sits right around his career average in terms of walk rate. His home run rate wasn't egregious. His velocity went up. His xFIP was basically about, at the career norms right there. If you look at his expected ERA was a 3.46. So what happened? Well, he had a 320 BABIP against. And he had a 69% left on base percentage, and the Padres suck at defense. Not a good defensive team. So, do I think Dylan Cease is like top tier? Probably not. He's not going to be like your top 10 starting pitcher in baseball. Do I think he kind of sits in that 10 to 20 range most seasons? Yeah, he probably does. I think this is a guy who has probably an argument to be one of the 20 best starting pitchers in baseball next year. You can sign him. He's going to be 30 years old. He's not going to be super old. The aging curve for pitchers is actually much better than it is for hitters, which seems counterintuitive. When you think hitters, you don't think Tommy John, and you think pitchers, that's always going to be a potential out there. But there were 6 pitchers last year over 35 who were worth 3 wins. There were 2 hitters. So you age better as a pitcher. And if the Cubs are going to sign somebody to an 8-year contract or a 6-year contract into the mid to late 30s, I think it's going to be a pitcher. Dylan Cease, I think, is kind of right up the alley with things they need. They need strikeouts. They need velocity. He kind of adds both of those things. Yeah, he's got a QO that's going to be attached to him, but they picked up at least one with Tucker, and they signed. And I know there's going to be a lot of people who say, well, I'll believe it when the Cubs spend that kind of money on a player. They did 2 years ago with Dansby Swanson. And Dylan Cease isn't going to get anything that Dansby Swanson probably didn't. So it's probably going to be in that same range, 6-7 years. 150 to 200 million, $180 million range. That's what he's looking at. So the Cubs signing him seems both possible if we look at like precedent, possible in terms of fit and what they need, possible in that, we know that they talked to the Padres about maybe even acquiring him last year. So like there has to be some internal like of him. I do believe that he's going to be on the radar, and I think when we talk about any of these guys, we have to realize that I don't think the Cubs are going to get irrational about any of them, right? That's not Jed Hoyer's game. Jed Hoyer is going to offer them market value. Not more than market value, but what he perceives as market value. And whether it's Dylan Cease or a few of these other names, I do think that they're probably going to sign somebody to a contract pitching wise that is bigger than a lot of people probably expect them to be. And I think Dylan Cease is going to be one of the people that they look at a lot.
Yeah, I kind of, not kind of, I do agree with you. I don't want to put words in your mouth, but it sounds like you're saying if the Cubs do go, quote, like big game hunting in free agency, it will be
starter
with a starting pitcher, not a bat, which I agree.
Yeah.
Because if it was going to be a bat, why not just bring back Kyle Tucker, right? Like I know that exceeds what all of these starting pitchers are going to get financially. But if you're going to go big game hunting and it was a bat, you'd probably just, bark up the tree of Kyle Tucker. And we don't think that's happening. I think most Cubs fans don't think that's happening. So if they do go big game fishing, big game hunting out, or whatever, vernacular you want to use, I do think it's a starting pitcher. And Dylan Cease just makes a ton of sense. Familiarity with the Cubs. Of course, they drafted him. There's been certainly some flirtation on the Cubs side the last couple of years in the form of trade rumors surrounding Dylan Cease. 30 years old, makes a lot of sense, would be a great fit in the rotation for the Cubs. I don't know how you want to do this exactly. We're not obviously going to go through all these names, but a couple of the other big names, you have a couple of lefties with Ranger Suarez and Framber Valdez. I would say I doubt it, but I don't know. I just there's so many links to Dylan Cease with the Cubs. That's why I kind of started there. I'm not necessarily suggesting he's the biggest name, but he certainly is one of them. He's right in that tier with those other guys. But I know the other two names that I would say most, Jason, I think you would agree, or talk about are Valdez, Suarez. Maybe you could throw in like Michael King and like Zach Gallen, had a pretty bad year, but before that he was like Cy Young good for a little while. But those big names are really Cease, Valdez, Suarez that I feel like everyone's talking about.
Yeah, and I think Cease fits more than the other two. I think he does what the Cubs like in better for us. Framber Valdez kind of fits though. If we're being honest about Framber's kind of his whole kind of profile, he's somebody who doesn't strike out a ton of hitters. That's kind of a Cubs thing. He gets a lot of ground balls. The Cubs love ground balls and using their defense to their advantage. So if you were really looking at a starting pitcher and you were saying, all right, I got a starting pitcher here who's really damn good on the surface, who can I make better? Framber Valdez kind of fits that mold. So I'd kind of make an argument that maybe Valdez fits into that mold. He is 32. He's a little bit older, so that might kind of pull that away. But he is somebody who sits at a 58.6% ground ball range. The Cubs love them some ground ball pitchers with Horner and Swanson and Shaw. It makes sense. So you could say, well, you know what, I could take Framber Valdez, who, last year, if I'm remembering correctly, and I'm gonna go double check this just off the top of my head, but I don't believe that the Astros were a particularly great fielding team in total. They were a little bit better than I thought they were. So like a 2 DRS, which wasn't all that good. They get slightly above average, but they were 19th in the league in it. So maybe if I can take somebody who wasn't with a great defense last year, I can make him even better. I could make that argument that maybe he's in there. I just don't think that Ranger Suarez fits their shtick. Maybe Zach Gallen, if the Cubs want to kind of concern themselves with the fear of the lockout going long term, and they look at Zach and they're like, hey, we can fix him. We can get him on a high AVV, short term deal. Maybe he fits, but I think he fits more as the second guy that you sign. If you sign 2 starting pitchers, Gallen's the second one. I don't think you can come away this offseason and say the best pitcher we got is Zach Gallen, and make me feel comfortable about that.
Sorry for chuckling, but yes, no, yeah,
2-3 years ago that was okay. Yes, today, now he's not. He was horrible last year, and there was a lot of backsliding on fastball shape, fastball velocity. So you would have to basically be listen, we looked at the track line data. We think we can get this guy in and fix him, but that can't be what you do as like your number one move either. So yeah, I think there's a couple of guys, and then when we get to some of the Japanese guys, there's a Japanese starting pitcher that I'll say it right now, is kind of a bury the lead for a moment, and you gotta have to wait till you get there. But I think there's a Japanese starting pitcher that's going to come over that I would be very surprised if wasn't on the very, very top of the Cubs list on guys that they are interested in.
Yeah, it's a lot easier. We'll get to because we're going to move to either relief pitchers or hitters, but we'll save a section for the Japanese
save it
players
at the end.
Yeah, especially since I'm gonna leave that one to you. But it's a lot easier to, I think, Jason, sell the Cubs fan base on, hey, we made a pretty big splash. It's Dylan Cease. Like, Cubs fans would be like, all right, cool. Like Dylan Cease, compared to, hey, you know what? We added a starting pitcher. It was Zach Allen. And again, it's not a disrespect to Zach Allen, but they're just not on the same playing field.
They're not
right now. So
I think I know that there's a lot of people who are probably concerned that the Cubs aren't going to spend a lot, and I think it's okay to have some fears on that. I've got a little bit of fears
Heyman had
myself.
some words.
Yeah, but I think that's actually kind of why they're probably going to. I don't think they're going to enter. I don't think they enter 2026 with a lower payroll than they did in 2025 by any means or necessary. Like, maybe it's a couple million, but whatever. They have $80 million right now, and if Shota doesn't pick it up, like almost like $90 million right now to basically play with in terms of like what they do with this roster, and not a lot of obvious places to spend it on. I do think that they will spend most of that money. And if they go all the way up to the luxury tax, it could be up to $100 million that they could legitimately spend this offseason. And I know that they didn't spend a ton last year. I'm not going to defend the amount that they spend. At the same time, they did try to go $20 million above what they did when they tried to sign Tyler Scott, when they tried to sign Bregman. So like, there is some potential there, and the Cubs have a lot of contracts that are falling off after next year. $85 million in contracts that'll fall off after this year. So like, any concern that you have that, they want to stay under the potential salary cap, no salary cap is going to go significantly under the LT line. Like that's not going to be a thing. Then the salary cap is going to drop to $150 million. And even if it did, if the Cubs went to the LT and dropped off $85 million, they'd still be under it next year. So I do think that the Cubs are going to spend some, and they're going to have to spend some in some decent amount of chunks places, because there's only so many places to spend it in. So I do think that they'll probably get at least one really fun player this offseason. Starting pitcher feels like it's the kind of the obvious one.
Yeah, we'll move on. We'll go to relief pitchers. We'll just stick with the arms, unless there's any other names you want to touch base on. Actually, let me do this. I've just got a quick yes or no for you. Or no, is it a yes or no? Yeah, I'll make it a yes or no.
Yeah, make it.
Will Tariq Skubal be with the Detroit Tigers on opening day?
No.
Okay. You know what? It's I feel like it's more bold to say no, but I don't think he finishes this year with the Tigers. So your two options are trade him now or trade him at the deadline, because they're not. They're not ponying up that money.
They're not going to trade him at the deadline.
Because the problem, if you're in first place, you're in the hunt, and then you trade Skubal. What message does that? You know the message that sends. And with Skubal starting every fifth day, and with how the Tigers stack up right now in the AL Central, very much so, probably going to be in the hunt if Tariq is in the picture. I'm 100% in agreement with you. I think, again, a foregone conclusion guy where Detroit's not going to pony up the money to keep him around. So you can't let him walk. You just can't. You can't, knowing what you could get back. So the best time to trade him, in my opinion. I'm so glad you said no, he will not be on the Tigers opening day, because I could not agree more when you just consider all the factors. Because it's either, if you let him walk, then everyone's like, holy crap. Like, let's say they let him play out the year. You don't win the World Series, the ultimate goal. And then he walks and goes somewhere else. That whole fan base is going to be showing up with pitchforks.
They'll go nuts.
They're going to storm the stadium.
You can't get a comp pick from him. Yeah, you can't get a comp pick from him. I think they'll try to. I think they will trade him. I think the one interesting aspect is going to be how teams kind of look at their prospects. If they are afraid of a lockout, if they are afraid of a cap, well, prospects are the best way to get around that. So you might find teams a little bit more struggling to pony up big prospects this offseason, but I think somebody will. Somebody's going to make it happen.
We'll see. I was curious on your thoughts on that, because when I kind of laid it out for myself, I was thinking about this like a couple weeks ago. Whenever there was an article I read about Scuball and what are the Tigers going to do, and we know some of the pieces of the puzzle, right? Like it would be stunning if the Tigers forked over the contract that another team likely would if they let it play out into free agency. And so I'm like, okay, they probably should trade him, as much as that's a tough pill to swallow, but when? And to me at the deadline, it would make no sense given that the Tigers would probably be in contention. Let's pivot to relief pitchers. This one's kind of there's two parts to this, Jason, because the Cubs themselves kind of rode the horse of a lot of veteran arms out of the bullpen this year. You're talking about guys like Caleb Thielbar, Drew Pomerantz out of nowhere had a pretty damn good year. They made the trade for Taylor Rogers, didn't have much of an impact. Brad Keller was incredible for what the expectations were. Even throw that aside, Brad Keller was just really damn good in general. They made the trade for Soroka. All those names I mentioned are free agents. Guys like Aaron Savali that they scooped up along the way, also a free agent. So the Cubs have, some in-house names that are free agents that maybe they'll consider a couple of those guys to bring back. But also we have some, heavy-hitting names like Edwin Diaz, Robert Suarez, Helsley is a free agent, Devin Williams. How do you see the Cubs navigating free agency? Because, Jason, we typically see them take the route of, not going for an Edwin Diaz or a Robert Suarez and instead adding more of a surplus of different options, different arms that maybe are slightly outside of the box sort of thinking for the Cubs. So do you see them taking that approach, or is this maybe an offseason where they go get a big name?
So I've been thinking about this one because the Andrew Kittredge thing kind of really threw a wrench into a lot of my thinking. I would have told you
traded
at
him
the
back.
Beginning of it, easy pickup. Like I would have picked that option up easy. He was the second best pitcher according to XFIT since he came over to the Cubs. He's had a couple injuries here or there in his career, but the guy pitched really well with the Cubs. So if you were going, and the Cubs have kind of made it a habit these last couple of years to target a mid-30s reliever on a 1-year expiring contract. Hector Neris, Ryan Presley, it's kind of their MO. Well, they have one right in front of their face. And what do? They trade him back to Baltimore for cash considerations. They weren't picking up the option, so they got whatever they could for it. That was kind of weird. Maybe the Cubs just aren't a believer in Kittredge. Okay, maybe. And maybe they thought they could budget out a cheaper 2-year, $2 million less on a guy later, possibly. But they have so much money to potentially spend that I have a hard time believing that. I do kind of feel like they're going to change their philosophy just a little bit on how they look at a bullpen. I don't necessarily think they're going to vastly change it. I don't think they're going to sign Edwin Diaz in December. They're not going to the winter meetings. They're going to sign Edwin Diaz first. I don't believe that that's how the Cubs are going to operate. I wouldn't be surprised if the Cubs kind of waited until January. If Ryan Helsley's still around, if Devin Williams is still around, maybe they go after them. Sneaking suspicion, gun to my head, I think they're going to re-sign Brad Keller, which I think kind of represents a little bit of a different departure for them to make a multi-year commitment to a reliever. I don't know. I get the feeling that him and Hodovoy were really good for each other last year. I think the Cubs really like him. I think he really liked Chicago. So I'll go ahead and say that I think they a 3-year, $27 million contract is what I would guess. Maybe $9 million a year. They go get Brad Keller. And then they play their regular game outside of that. Where, it's kind of maybe Devin Williams is there and you pick up Williams later, or you go find this year's Caleb Thielbar. And I haven't really had a chance to look through all of the, who knows what's the Cubs would be interested in. But, last year they basically created a shoestring bullpen as they went, and it turned out to be one of the best bullpens in baseball in terms of ERA. I think they need more strikeouts. I think they're going to hope that Porter Hodge is going to come back a little bit healthy. Hope that there's some internal development in there. They didn't expect Daniel Palencia probably to be one of their 3 best relievers at the end of the year, and he was. So yeah, I think it's probably going to be kind of a Mod Podge of that kind of stuff where I have this feeling they're going to re-sign Brad Keller. I feel like they'll pick up one more pretty good bullpen arm throughout the offseason. I don't think that they're going to set the market, but they'll wait on it. And then, the Caleb Thielbar of this year and the Brian Braziers and the who's going to give me this guy. And I think they feel confident that they can kind of just build a bullpen. And I don't think anything from last year would make you feel any otherwise. But they do have to spend some money, and I do think a little bit will go to the bullpen. And like I said, sneaking suspicion is Brad Keller.
I would love to have Brad Keller back. That dude was nails, man.
I liked him a lot.
Yeah, he was so good. He was he was not part of a roller coaster ride. And what I mean by that, Jason, is, there have been a few Cubs bullpen arms in recent years. I always go back to Hector Neris. Porter Hodge was a roller coaster ride a little bit this year. And of course, injury played a part too. But there have been some of those names where it's like, it's appointment television when they come on the mound because you don't know how the hell it's going to turn out. Brad Keller was pretty damn reliable.
Reliable as hell. He was great.
Just felt so confident whenever he was out there. Any other relief names you want to talk about? Relief pitchers? There's a lot out there, and like I said, including the Cubs' own names that are free agents.
There are so many out there. I think if you're looking for a guy that the Cubs are going to build a bullpen around, and kind of like qualifications wise, I kind of almost want to talk more than like guys that I think that the Cubs are going to actually target in terms of names, because I think I think the Cubs are basically going to build their bullpen for the most part two ways this offseason. One, they're going to target free agents who kind of fit the Caleb Thielbar mold. They're going to be guys who have been good in the past, had a down season, but they look at it and they say, it's a mechanical thing, right? It's a thing that we can fix. And they have a thing. Caleb Thielbar has the curveball. That's something that they felt like they could really use and go after. The other thing is the Cubs have so many 40-man spots that are open. Be very cognizant of who they put waiver claims in on. They can basically, unlike the last couple of years, they ended the offseason and they had this 40-man crunch. Like, damn it, what are we going to do with Matt Mervis? Like, is he going to get picked up? Is he not? Like, do we have to worry about him in the Rule 5 draft? The Cubs don't have that this year. They have a lot of 40-man spots. And one of the things that Jed Hoyer has done over the last couple of years is, man, anybody who hits a waiver wire, Cubs are putting in claims. Cubs are going to put in a claim. They're going to pick up this guy. They're going to pick up. So I think you're probably going to see a lot, probably multiple guys in the Cubs bullpen will be waiver wire claims. Players that other teams are not super interested in. They DFA them, and the Cubs look at them and they go, "Hey, this is a guy I think I could do something with." The Royals just dumped Kyle Wright the other day on waivers. I would not be surprised if Kyle Wright is somebody that the Cubs may look into. There was a time period where Kyle Wright was a very good player with the Braves. We're talking somebody just a couple years ago was throwing 95 miles an hour. And then he kind of fell off. Would I be surprised if the Cubs said, "Hey, I think as a reliever, Kyle Wright's kind of like my Brad Keller this year"? No, I wouldn't be surprised at all. I don't think they're going to pick up Kyle Wright as a member of the Chicago Cubs starting rotation, but the Cubs have lots of options. Kyle Wright might be a guy they look at and say, "Hey, I can get this guy to 95 miles an hour. I can put him in the bullpen. He can be my Brad Keller type this year." Will it be Kyle Wright? I don't know. These guys are like, the Cubs probably have a list of 200 pitchers they pick up immediately if they got DFA'd. Wright might be on that list. He might not be. But he seems like the kind of guy I would expect the Cubs to probably put some waiver claims in on to try to pick these guys up and say, "Hey, we're going to throw him in. We're going to throw him in our pitch lab. We're gonna let him get with the entire pitch lab crew. We're gonna get TrackMan data on him. We're gonna watch every little bit of him that we can. We're gonna get Driveline on him, and we're gonna see what we can get from him." And so yeah, I think we'll probably see a lot of guys like that.
Northside Baseball Podcast, Mitch Woodmeyer, Jason Ross here with you, combing over the more than a comb over. We're diving into some deep, detailed stuff. Cubs free agency preview, what they might do, what they might not do. Let's go to hitters. The one reason I think the hitter market is fascinating from a Cubs perspective, Jason, is there's a lot of old friend alerts. There's a lot of names that the Cubs have been linked to in recent years. There's names like Alex Bregman, who I thought the Cubs were getting last year with all the reports that were coming out before the rug kind of got pulled out from underneath him at the last second and he ended up in Boston. There's a lot of Cubs ties to free agency this year when it comes to hitters. Don't know exactly how we should split this up. I actually will start here, and I hate doing this. Jason. Kyle Schwarber is not going to be a Chicago Cub. I have had a couple of my buddies that are just like praying that somehow Kyle Tucker comes back to the Cubs. It's just, I would say this. As awesome as he is, Kyle Schwarber is like the rare guy that he seems to be getting better as he's getting older to me. Like, his seasons keep getting better.
He's his career year right now at 32, 33.
Yeah, it's crazy. I don't know where the fit would be. He's a pretty strict DH. and he's going to get paid a pretty penny by someone. I don't think the
Yep.
Cubs pony up the
Mm-mm.
offer that he will get from someone to try to one up
No.
it when you know it's pretty much a strict DH. I just don't see where the fit would be with the
Nope.
Cubs with how their roster and lineup is currently laid out. So I wanted to get out ahead of that. I love Kyle Schwarber. Everyone does. Fan favorite
Yeah,
anywhere he
he's
goes.
fun as hell.
Yes, but it's
He's not
just
going to be in Chicago.
it is not going to happen.
Except he's visiting. That's when he'll visit on another team, but he's not. The Cubs are not gonna put down the money that it takes to sign Kyle Schwarber. They don't put forth the effort in terms of straight DHs. Like that's just not their MO. So I'd be shocked if it was Tucker.
Yeah, and then
Or
another
Schwarber,
old
sorry, Schwarber.
Schwarber. Yeah,
The
we
same
both
thing you
said
did.
yes. Yeah, another old friend alert. Cody Bellinger, not going to happen. They traded him away for financial flexibility, and then didn't really use that.
If he lives New York.
Yes, yeah. So
I think him and the Yankees fit really well together.
Yep.
He's going to stay in New York.
Belly, you can count out. And then the two names I did want to bring up where it's like previous links to the Cubs, Pete Alonso, not going to be a Cub.
Mm-mm.
Just not going to happen. But there was another point in time 2 years ago where I was like, sounds like the Cubs are trying to hammer out a trade for Pete Alonso.
Yeah.
And then the last name is Alex Bregman, where out of the names I mentioned, I would say Bregman's the most realistic, but I still don't think it's going to. No. It's like, where does he fit? He's going to take Matt Shaw's reps at third because you have Dansby at short.
I don't know where he fits, and he was terrible in the second half last year.
Yep,
he wasn't
good. And you have Nico Horner at second. So I just wanted to bring up those names to start for a couple of reasons, Jason. One, like outside of Kyle Tucker, some of the biggest names are Pete Alonso, Kyle Schwarber, Bellinger certainly up there when you're talking about hitters. Alex Bregman, I know Bo Bichette too. But then to the group I brought up, there's some sort of link in the past, right, with the Cubs. You had Schwarber and Belly who played for him, Alonso with all the rumors a couple of years ago, and then the Cubs clearly trying to work out a deal with Bregman last offseason. But out of them, none of them. I see none of it happening. Where could you see the Cubs going free agency-wise with a bat? I can't imagine it'd be anywhere near any of these top tier guys. At least I don't think they'll go that avenue at all.
No, I don't think so either. It's kind of hard to figure out what they're going to do offensively. This is where I've been struggling to figure it out. Because on one hand, every position's filled. Like every position except DH is filled. And I know Seiya Suzuki was a DH last year, but he's a capable right fielder. He makes some bad eye test plays and he makes a bonehead play every here or there, but he's a capable right fielder. So like DH is the one place, and I don't think they'll sign a DH only like Kyle Schwarber, because that's just not the Cubs kind of thing. They like versatility and guys who can play lots of different positions and can do something defensively. So I don't think they're going to spend on Kyle Tucker. The infield I feel is too settled. I don't think that they're going to move on from Matt Shaw at third base and sign in like Bregman. I actually kind of think they might extend Nico Horner. So like it's not going to be there. So figuring out what they do offensively is I think that's kind of the real linchpin to the offseason. And I think if you can figure that out, you probably have a good idea of what they're going to do. I can't tell if what they're going to do is kind of like go with like a better Justin Turner, like Harrison Bader, maybe like a Paul Goldschmidt type of a thing, as like your kind of like guy who can hit left-handed pitching off the bench. If they'll go kind of a bench with like Kevin Alcantara, and then maybe they just don't do a lot offensively, or kind of what I think they're going to end up doing is, and I don't have much for you here, but I kind of feel like, but I kind of feel like expect the unexpected here. When we went into last offseason, it felt like it was kind of a straightforward offseason. You were like, all right, you go into the offseason, offense is mostly set. You got Cody Bellinger coming back. He's not going to opt out. You kind of got these things. Maybe you trade like Nico Horner for a pitcher. That's probably not going to happen. So you go in, you sign pitcher. Kind of go into the next year. And you've got Paredes at third base. And you kind of got your roster set up. You're missing maybe like one hitter. And then they kind of turned it all on the head. The Paredes gone. They bring in Kyle Tucker, Cody Bellinger gone. And like that, like the back-to-back kind of like ways that these moves happen. I think you went into the offseason, you didn't expect it to happen this way. It happens this way, and Cubs came out in a weird place that you probably didn't expect. And I kind of expect that kind of an outcome where like we can sit here and talk about like an easy move, right? The easy offseason is sign Dylan Cease, sign Kyle Schwarber with most of your money, build a bullpen like you have over the last couple of years, kind of wash your hands of it. Boom, you've got a team, right? That you're cooking with gasoline. And I don't think that's the way that the Cubs are going to operate this offseason. I just don't think that that's the way that Jed Hoyer likes to do things. So I would say that the best new player on the Cubs is somebody we're not talking about right now in any sort of circle. Like, it's not a player that we're talking about. It's not a player that we really have on our radar. It could be a trade that we're talking about. It could be maybe the Cubs, like, we'll talk about some of these Japanese guys. Maybe one of these Japanese guys is really the guy that they really like and they feel like a fit there. But it also could be kind of like a musical chairs type of a situation where, we go in thinking like there's no way in hell they're going to trade Matt Shaw or Nico Horner or something like that. And they say, hey, actually, what are you guys doing? Watch what we got. Right. And then they're making these kind of big trades. And so I think, I think the biggest unknown that I have, because I feel confident that there are some players in pitching that I think that they like. I feel confident that they're going to just kind of waiver wire a lot of their bullpen, but how they handle the offense is going to be really interesting to me. And I think that, like I said, I think it's the linchpin in the entire offseason, because they lost arguably their best hitter on paper. He's gone. And do you just like insert Kyle, like Moises Ballesteros or Owen Casey into that space? He's your rookie this year. You go with internal development. You spend all your money in pitching. That could be an option, but I don't know. I feel like whatever it is we're talking about offense, like whatever anybody's offensive plan is, that's going to be that's when we look back in February, that's going to be the place where we go, oh man, that wasn't even close. I think that'll be the one that's not the closest. Because it felt like that last year too. I don't think that the subsequent moves of trade your starting third baseman to Houston in the Kyle Tucker trade Cody Bellinger basically for salary relief was like an obvious outcome in what the Cubs did, and yet it happened. And I kind of feel like that's where we're going this time.
Well said. I can't predict anything on the hitter market outside of they're not going to be in the market for any of those top names. They're just not.
No, I don't think they will be either.
They're not. And that includes Kyle Tucker. Let's finish up with this, Jason. I think we've covered the bases pretty well. No pun intended. The Japanese players.
Oh, yeah, these are my favorite ones.
Yeah, I'm leaving this up to you. And I the one note I will put in there, Jason, is this is an avenue the Cubs have obviously explored in depth in recent years when you talk about Seiya Suzuki, Shota Imanaga, and players like that. So it would not be a surprise to see the Cubs sort of bark up that tree again. You hinted earlier you were really, really zoning in on a potential starting pitcher.
Yes, there's a starting pitcher, and his name is, and everybody out there is going to have to bear with me because my Japanese pronunciation isn't exactly on point, but it's Tatsuya Imai. He is a right-handed pitcher who has been pitching with the Oryx Buffaloes in the last few seasons. I am a big fan of him, and I think the Cubs are going to be a big fan of him. I think he hits a lot of the kind of like hallmarks for when we talk starting pitching that I think the Cubs would like. First off, he's 27 years old. So we're not talking about somebody in their mid 30s that they're going to have to pay out until they're, in their late 30s. He's a lot younger. Contracts on him have kind of looked in that like $140 to $200 million range. I've seen some people on the low man, like $80-90 million range. I don't think he's going to be down there. I do think he's probably going to sit in that like $130 to $200 million range. He's not Yoshinobu Yamamoto good, at least on paper. So, kind of like scale it back a little bit, but he's also probably on paper a step up from Shota Imanaga. So kind of think of him like if Yamamoto's like kind of the best type of pitcher that we're going to see come over from the NPB, and Shota Imanaga is kind of like a mid-tier starting pitcher. I think he's kind of in that second group. He can throw his fastball. It's been reported to hit 99 on the gun. I will kind of hesitate to remind everybody that the ball that they use in Japan is slightly smaller than the Major League Baseball. So a lot of these things kind of change, especially when pitchers are pitching a little bit more frequently. Japanese pitchers usually pitch, I think, on 6 days rest most of the time. Major League Baseball, 5 days. So I wouldn't. He's not going to sit 99. He did average about 95 on his fastball, and I think it's probably fair to see him sit in that area. What's real fun about him, though, is his arm angle. He is a flat arm angle guy, and the Cubs have thrown a lot of pitchers and even moved their arm angles down recently. Colin Ray was one last year that worked to a lot of success, and I think they like arm angles from that space. Greg Zumach, shout out to Greg. He's the best out there, but he's mentioned a few times that the Cubs don't like supernators. They like pronators, and that's how you kind of move your hand. And Amai is a pronator, so he's not a supernator. And he's got this funky slider. It is funky. They call it a reverse slider. Basically, it's a screwball. It is a slider with arm side run as opposed to glove side run. So that means, when we look at a slider, we're thinking about, to a right-handed hitter, a slider that would go down and away from them, except his reverse slider backs up on him essentially and goes down and inside to a right-handed hitter. The Cubs love them some funk. They love weird pitchers and guys who don't do things normally. I think stuff plus shapes are going to hate this slider. They're going to tell you it's terrible because it doesn't shape like a normal slider. It really doesn't. It is a slider, but it's not a slider. So shape-wise, it's ugly. But it worked really well. 45% whiff rate on it last year in Japan. So you've got a righty who's 27. He does not have a qualifying offer to him. The Cubs are big on Japanese players. If just to kind of even hammer that home, if you are at all kind of in the know-how or paying attention at all, there was a really cool report today that the Cubs may have signed a Japanese college player who had, strangely enough, not been drafted in the Japanese baseball draft, went completely undrafted, is weighing, and this is not a joke, is weighing 2 offers right now.
Goldman
one
Sachs.
From Goldman Sachs is the other one, right? Yeah, I'm sure you saw it, but this is like,
I did.
Bonkers. But it shows you where the Cubs view their relationship with Japanese players and how they view Japanese players. They're into them, right? They brought in Shota, they brought in Seiya Suzuki. They've got good relations with Yu Darvish enough that they've Yu Darvish basically sold guys on the Cubs. So I think when you kind of start adding it up, if I don't want to say anybody is likely, because you can't right now. I can't say that anybody is likely going to sign with the Cubs. There are 29 other Major League Baseball teams and a long way to go. If I was handicapping the pitchers that I thought was most likely to end up a Chicago Cub, like Amai's like near the top of my list. I think he hits just about what the Cubs like. He's the right age. He throws some weird stuff. He gives you a little bit of velocity. I don't think he's a top end rotation guy. I think he's kind of like a really good number 2, like a good number 2 kind of guy. But I think he kind of fits in there into what the Cubs like and what they want to do. So I'm a big Amai fan. Like if gun to head, if you said pick one starting pitcher who ends up on the Cubs, I think it's Amai. I think what they end up doing is like Amai and Zach Gallen, Amai and like some other guy that they think they can make better. And I'm not saying it's Zach Gallen, but pick a starting pitcher like Matthew Boyd, Zach Gallen, somebody they can get on like a 2 or 3 year deal. And then they couple it with one long-term guy. So Dylan Cease or Amai. And I think Amai, if all druthers, I think they'd probably rather have an Amai, but we'll see. I'm just kind of reading tea leaves. In terms of other Japanese guys, there are 2 big hitters coming over. Hitter number 1 that you're familiar with probably is Munetake Murakami.
Correct. That is the name.
I can't imagine that the Cubs are going to sign him. He is one of the biggest red flag prospects to come over from Japan that I've ever seen. Now he's also one of the biggest green flag prospects in many ways. He is so divisive. I think, it looks like he's probably going to get somewhere between like $16 and $20 million. He's probably going to get 6 to 8 years on his contract. He shows some of the best exit velocities and batted ball data that of any prospect that you can find. I mean, he crushes the baseball. When he hits the baseball, he crushes it. And he whiffed 50% of the time on breaking balls. And that's against NPB breaking balls, which no shade to Japanese pitchers, but they're just not as good as Major League pitchers. So if you're whiffing 50% of the time on breaking balls in Japan, I promise you Major League teams know about that. If I can go on your Japanese StatCast page and find that, I promise you every Major League team has already. They already know. So you kind of got to sign Murakami and have a plan for him, because like Joey Gallo would be a good outcome for him. right now, and I don't think he's Joey Gallo right now. So, and Gallo had a couple good years, but he was also good defensively, and Murakami is probably okay defensively for a little bit until his size pushes him to first base. So you gotta fix it. You gotta fix it quick. The exit velocities suggest that when he hits it, the power is going to be fine. The issue is that he just can't hit breaking balls. There is the second Japanese big hitter is coming over, is also a and again, we're going to make sure I get my pronunciation right, is again a first base, third baseman, Kazuma Okamoto. He's a little bit safer in terms of hitters, better contact rates, walks a ton, doesn't strike out very much. But there's been some concern over his handling of pitches 94 plus on velocity. It doesn't look particularly good. He's a very big pull hitter who doesn't have great batted ball data. So, there's like, he could be like Isaac Paredes type, where he doesn't hit the ball super hard, but he pulls the hell out of it, and he can hit 20 home runs that way. He's not great defensively. For most reports, it's kind of iffy. I've seen some people say, yeah, you can play third base. I've seen other people say first base. Like, this guy's going to be a first baseman. So I think you kind of got to wonder, if you wanted to replace Justin Turner at $14 million for the next 4 years, Okamoto's that guy. I think he's Justin Turner on steroids from last year. He's the guy who definitely hits against lefties every single time. He could take some time at first base. He can play a little bit at third base, maybe. He's played some corner outfield here or there as well. So you put him in corner. Maybe he's your DH, and he splits duties with Ballesteros and Casey type of a thing. He gives you a lot of kind of versatility. On the other hand, I think other teams are probably going to see. There's going to be a team, I think, that sees him as a starter. And I don't think the Cubs can see him as a starter in terms of those positions. So I don't think he ends up here. You could probably make an argument that he should end up here, but I'm not banking on it. There is so those are kind of your two big hitters. Let me again, I want to double check, and I want to make sure I say this guy's name right, because there is one other starting pitcher that I find pretty interesting in terms of how he could fit in with the Cubs. Part of the problem is that when we talk about this one, he just isn't. I'm not quite certain he's going to be posted, and that's the problem. So let me again. I want to make sure I say his name right. His name is Takashi. No, wrong one. I looked up the wrong site though. This one is, again, sorry, y'all have to forgive me. Looking up a pronunciation, because his name popped back into my head as somebody I liked and I forgot about it. Sakai. That's it. Sakai is his name. All right. So Hiroto Sakai. He is also 27, so he's younger. The problem is that the Hanshin Tigers do not post players. And if you are a big if you want Sakai to come over, Hanshin has not posted a player ever. They never post players. So he's currently he would have to be posted. But Sakai is interesting in that he's probably not in the MI category. He's probably more in the Shota category, in that kind of number 3-ish starting pitcher. But he shows really interesting velocity and interesting funky shapes. He's more of a kitchen sink guy. So, when we talk a Mai is somebody who the reverse slider that kind of backs up on you like a screwball, I think is super fun. Sakai is going to throw 4, 5, 6 pitches at you with a fastball that sits in that 95% range. But the weird thing is he comes way over the top. So when we talk about his motion, he's like a Jonah Tong almost, where he's going to come way over the top on his action. And you kind of wonder how that plays. The Cubs use that with Chris Flexen, and so they've shown that they might like a pitcher who kind of comes way over the top as well, as opposed to coming way down to the side. So we'll see. I think he would be somebody the Cubs would be interested in if he gets posted, but I don't think that right now we're very certain if it's going to happen. Hanshin doesn't post guys. Oryx doesn't really post guys either, but it does sound like that Amai is probably coming over. We've gotten some kind of some some juice in that direction. So I think the Cubs would be interested in some of the pitchers and Okamoto. I do not think that they're going to be interested in Murakami. I just don't think he fits. But hey, if you want to talk under the kind of crazy things that the Cubs could do that I wouldn't have on my bingo board, yeah, signing Murakami could be the thing. Maybe they go that route. He does offer you some versatility at third base, first base, DH. You look at the exit velocities, and the Cubs have had kind of success lately of working with guys with high strikeouts and bringing them down. So, I would say never with Murakami. I think the other three are more likely. Sakai is somebody who probably isn't going to be posted. My guess is he's not posted and no inside information. Just kind of going off of reading what others have talked about. But Amai is kind of like my guy. Like if there's one free agent this year, it's Amai. I usually kind of target one, especially from the Japanese ranks. It's kind of my favorite. And I think Amai is kind of the guy this year. So I don't know. I think he's probably like the guy that I think the Cubs like the most, like just from what they like. So I like him. Maybe the Cubs like him. We'll see if he's here. Chances are we'll be talking about him signing like a deal with some other team, and all this will be for nothing. Yeah, actually, if there's 1 year you want to sign a Japanese player, this is the year to sign a Japanese pitcher, because I don't think the Dodgers really care about starting pitching this offseason. Yeah, they got enough of it. Kyle. Yeah, they got enough of it. Like Kyle Tucker is like, they need more of an outfielder than they do a starting pitcher. So if you want to enter the starting pitching market and you don't want to be worried that he's just automatically going to the Dodgers, kind of the year to do it, which is also why I think the Cubs and Amai. Like I think that I think you will find that the Cubs will be a team involved in that. I would be surprised if they weren't.
Perfect. Anything else you want to finish up on? Otherwise, I have one more question for you.
No, I'm ready for a question.
Yeah. Any chance Cubs PCA hash out a long-term extension this winter?
Maybe. I think it's a maybe. I would kind of hesitate a little bit with PCA. Players who make their value with a lot of speed and defense are not always the players who kind of last the longest in terms of like their profile. I think that they could maybe do it. Actually, I kind of think if they're going to extend somebody, it's going to be Nico. I think the Cubs love them some Nico Horner. He's kind of like the Cubs prototypical guy.
We all love some Nico Horner, man.
Yeah,
dude's awesome.
He's the right age. Like he feels like a guy that you signed for like 6 years. So kind of in that Dansby Swanson range. Probably less,
which is the Cubs' sweet
value.
Spot. Yeah, like,
it's probably
probably
in there. Maybe they get him or Cade Horton or Matt Shaw or like one of these guys to sign like an 8 or 9 year contract. But I don't get the feeling that the Cubs are going to pay for what those guys would need to buy out of it. The Cubs just seem too value oriented. And I think to sign those guys out of it, you kind of have to give more value than they're worth today. And, from the Cubs end, I think that they're very much a value today kind of team, as opposed to like, maybe I can get lucky and like buy him out of it later. I think they're very much oriented in the now value. So I don't know, maybe they can, but I would say I don't think it's likely. I just get the feeling. I just don't think it's likely.
Fair. That's all we've got for you for this episode. We'll be bouncing in and out throughout the offseason, obviously, as the Cubs make moves with what they do in free agency. Should be interesting. The Cubs should be players, I would assume, in some capacity. Yeah. We both believe it'll be for maybe one of the top starting pitchers available. A lot of those links lie with Dylan Cease, so we'll see. Jason, it was fun as always. Always appreciative of the time as we do these. It had been a minute. The last one we did, of course, ended on a sour note. This one on more of a optimistic, fun note as we wait to see what the Cubs do throughout the winter in free agency. He is Jason Ross. I am Mitch Widmeyer. This has been another edition of the Northside Baseball Podcast.